Hello and welcome. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge something that's a little unusual. You're probably wondering why we released our regular weekly episode yesterday, and then today we're sharing another one. See, this week is different. Today marks 2 years since Aaron Bushnell's death. It felt important to create separate space, a space just for remembering him. And so this episode stands on its own. I want to offer a gentle content note. This episode includes references to suicide. There are no graphic descriptions, and today's focus is on remembering Aaron's life. But still, we understand that this subject can be difficult. If you need support at any point, you can call or text 988 in the U.S. to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. I want to say a word about why this episode belongs here on The Cult on the Cape. Aaron was born into and raised within the community of Jesus. The world he entered as a child was the same world many of us have spent years trying to understand and untangle. His life, not just his death, is part of the story. And 2 years ago, when the news broke, something shifted for many of us. For me, personally, it was a moment that made silence feel impossible. Not because his death was something to emulate, and not because it answered anything, but because it revealed how deeply formation, conscience, and moral injury can live inside a person long after they leave a high-control coercive group. Rock Harbor Truth, the nonprofit organization that brings you this podcast, was born in the months that followed Aaron's death. Not as a reaction, but as a response. The work we are doing now is because of Aaron. He never sat at this microphone. He never participated in a strategic planning meeting. But he cried out for freedom. And while that freedom has not come in the way he imagined, his story has stirred something much closer to home. It has helped some of us name our own captivity, behind religious walls, behind silence, behind fear. That doesn't redeem tragedy, but it does remind us that lives ripple outward in ways we can't predict. And so this episode belongs here, not because of how Aaron died, but because of where his life began, and because his life intersected with the same system many of us are still working to understand. 2 years ago, on February 25th, Aaron Bushnell died outside of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. The world saw a headline. Many saw a political act. Even more saw a controversy. But today we are not here to debate or analyze that final day. We are here to remember Aaron, the boy, the student, the friend, the thinker, the young man who wanted his life to matter. The community of Jesus in Orleans, Massachusetts, was the only world Aaron knew as a child. A high-control, coercive group where authority and obedience were central, and where individual identity was shaped within a system of control. He lived there until he left to join the military. For those who understand high-control environments, we know that early formation doesn't just leave a mark. It shapes a child's nervous system, their brain, their sense of self, their relationship to authority, and how they process guilt, sacrifice, and responsibility. Those patterns don't simply just disappear when someone leaves. They often continue shaping how a person carries moral weight in the world. But Aaron was also more than just the system he was raised in. He was curious and thoughtful. He was searching. He wrestled. He questioned. He cared deeply. And the people who loved him and grew up with his family knew him in ways no headline ever could. I received messages from people who wanted to share their reflections, and I'd like to read one of them now. I can't stop thinking about Aaron. His life ended in an extreme act of protest in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. I can't even bear to type the specifics. I'm not writing about what Aaron did. Rather, I'm writing to process my sorrow, my grief, even my rage. Every time I think about Aaron, I think about his family, and my heart breaks. I think about his mom, who was my roommate at a cult-run boarding school in Canada. When we were young staff members, we both endured a year of boot camp, atoning for our sins. I don't know how we survived 1995. I think about his dad, who was my brother Dan's best friend. When my brother dared to leave the cult, we were told to shun him. Even so, Aaron's dad tried to follow in Dan's footsteps. At my brother's home, he was given shelter, a job, and even help to buy a car. But the pull of the cult and the fear of hell was too strong. Eventually, Aaron's dad returned to fulfill God's plan for his life. He ended up at cult headquarters in Cape Cod, which is where he got married, had children, and still lives. I attended their wedding, watching his beautiful bride, my former roommate, wondering if it would ever be my turn. I think about his aunt, who was a bridesmaid in my wedding, and my roommate more times than I can count. I was always told to be more like her, since she followed the rules effortlessly. Believe me, I tried. I think about his youngest uncle, who was in my class and looks so much like Aaron, it's uncanny. He was once my summer go-between when I tried to write letters to a boarding student crush. You couldn't receive mail from someone of the opposite sex without it being censored. I learned that the hard way. I think about his oldest uncle, who, like my brother Garth, is a monk on Cape Cod. Just out of high school at Grenville, they followed God's will, moved countries, changed their names, and took lifetime vows of celibacy, poverty, and obedience to the mothers. Nothing scared me more than that calling. I think about his grandparents, one of my many foster parents to whom I was assigned. We weren't allowed to live with our own parents because of their idolatry. I used to sneak the leftover treats his grandma made. Her German chocolate cake was legendary. His grandpa, a Dallas Cowboy diehard, introduced me to football. He was also the culprit when I thought someone was stealing my acne lotion. He had thought it was shampoo. You could say that the members of Aaron's family were once like my own, but that's not how things work. At Grenville, we were alone, surrounded by people. We weren't meant to have family ties. I learned that quickly enough when I was removed from my parents' care at age 4. Our school had just fallen prey to the mothers, leaders of a Cape Cod commune, who would turn Grenville Christian College into an institution of paranoia. They taught how to attack sin through rituals of public humiliation and extreme discipline. Idolatry was one sin they often preached about. Parents were supposed to put God above their children. In fact, they preached against love in general. As they said, all human love is sin before God. Here's what parents learned to think. My children are not mine. They are God's. Here's what I, as a child, internalized. It's a sin to love me. I'm afraid the story they have told the children at the compound about Aaron is the same one we were told. See, this is what happens when you leave. Here is another written reflection. Dear Erin, you are constantly in my thoughts, be it waking, sleeping, walking the dog, eating cereal, taking out the trash. If I'm not directly engaged in something, it is your face I see. Your face, your young and so familiar face. I never met you, but your face is a Bushnell face through and through. And so my mind is tricked that I did in fact know you. In reality, I left the community a few years before you were born. Your mother and father, your aunts and uncles, your grandparents, these are people woven into daily memories. If I had obeyed instructions to marry a certain young man, I would have been the sister-in-law of one of your aunts. Your grandmother taught a small group of us cake decorating classes one spring. I picture us so clearly giggling around her dining room table as she demonstrated how to make every type of flower and leaf with delicious icing she made before we arrived. That icing was as comforting to me then as this memory is to me now. She never scolded us for eating the icing, and bless her, she didn't even silence our giggling. Your grandfather gave me my first awl. It was old with wood like leather, and it fit my hand perfectly. I was thrilled with the gift and use it to this day. Your mother, she was quirky and funny and distinctly herself. The outline of her hair could be identified from the furthest end of the lower hallway, and her laugh carried just as far. I've been trying to pin down a memory of your mother. We were on the 3rd floor of the main building and standing outside the little phone room. I can't remember our conversation, but I know she both listened to and comforted me. I know well what the community does to children and parents, but in the years I knew her, she was a delight. Knowing your family does not mean to presume that I knew you. I have read your last words over and over. Your friends have shared stories and memories that paint you as earnest, kind-hearted, intentional, and intelligent. Their stories tell of a young man who was exceptionally kind to people who are most often overlooked, who was deep in thought, trying to make sense of a broken and messy world, who, more often than not, made choices based on the needs of others. How I wish I did know you. How I wish all of us who have left could have been a support for you. A band of rebels where you could have seen yourself in us, just as many of us see ourselves in you. How my younger self identifies with you, longing to make a difference, despair at suffering, searching for answers and meaning, unraveling beliefs. I went to an anarchy meeting while I was in college, and the words resonated deeply with me. I probably would have returned, but was unsettled in any group, be it Christians or anarchists. We all leave at our own time, months, years, decades apart. Then we live the years of confusion, of guilt, of questioning. We all bear the painful process of deconstructing one version of ourselves and little by little birthing a new version. Generation after generation of young people treated as a collective group of free labor, but individually broken down with stunning accuracy to our individual personalities. We have not figured out how to help the next group of children survive a childhood that is no childhood at all. How to survive the constant dread that you're not good enough. How to survive the constant fear of sinning. How to act just good enough and just bad enough to reach the end of each day's tightrope. Many of us are haunted that young people leave without knowing a support system exists, So I talk to you now. A terribly sad and one-sided conversation, but deep in the black hole of my belief system, something I have not yet rebirthed, there is the tiniest hope that you might hear. Do not listen to the ones judging you. All who judge you are lost in their own fear. They judge you from their years of life, forgetting your youth. They judge you from their amount of empathy, ignorant of the heart that breaks with the world's suffering. They judge you from their own self-worth, unaware that any child of the community of Jesus does not know our worth. They judge you from fear of their own silence in the midst of injustice. They judge you because the fact that you sacrificed your life for others is more disturbing to them than the whole of Gaza's suffering. And on it goes. Listen well to all who have embraced you, to all who honor what you did, to all who see the extent of your convictions and the courage of your actions. Let me share why you are being embraced, why you will live in many hearts forever. Aaron, this is the first my fingers have paused. The first they hover over these letters in great unease, because how do we talk about what you did, and yet how can we not? So I tread lightly, terrified of misspeaking, and yet more terrified of ignoring you, of erasing you, of being too afraid to speak of you. I remember your words, and am ashamed to be so timid. You are embraced because you have a heart that is as sensitive as it is strong. You have a mind that is big enough to see humanity's suffering, while simultaneously forging your own way of thinking. You are embraced because you spoke out, you stood up, you said what so many only think. You are embraced because while all of us watched in horror, maybe lost sleep, maybe sent money, maybe used our tiny social media platform to yell ceasefire into the void, you weren't silent. On this, let's be very clear. Your action is a tragedy, and your motives are pure. Both are true. Both coexist. People need simple, and they retreat when life gets too complicated. Even worse, they attack when complicated comes too close. Your life was complicated. Your first 20 years on Earth were spent in a place where every minute of every day is planned and plotted to keep you down, keep you obedient and compliant, keep you talented and useful, keep you broken and silent. They raise us to be servants, not to God, but to themselves, to serve their lust for power and their obsession with control. Most people fill their lives with their own misery, but you, as you sought to free your heart and mind and soul from 20 years of battering, you ended yours because of the misery of others. You are exceptionally rare. Tragic, yes. Brave, yes. Tragic, yes. All the saints and sinners. Why can't people see that the loss of your life is a soul-crushing tragedy and still honor who you are and what you stand for? Let's go to Rock Harbor and walk on the flat sands of the open bay when the tide is out. Our feet leaving those magical prints in the sand that disappear before your eyes, and the evening light aglow, giving the most despairing heart just a little hope. It was the only place I could breathe during my time there, and perhaps you felt the same. Could you talk to anyone at the community of your longings and fears? Surrounded by people who talk of love and not a one to be trusted, when did you stop believing in the God of our childhood? the one who supposedly loved us, but more impactful, the one who made our innards tremble with fear. What made you leave? Was it a last straw or the whole rotten bale of hay? Did you plan it for months, or did you have enough one day? From your friends, we learn the most beautiful things about you. Your passion for the homeless, your conviction against injustice, your rage at politicians, your determination to create change. The very things the historical Jesus spent his life addressing. And yet, born and raised at the community of Jesus, all you knew was the selfish, insular, self-aggrandizing world in which we were raised. The world in which we had to work tirelessly, smile always, suffocate feelings, bury hopes, perform perfectly, and confess sin after endless sin. When come to find out, what we called sin, the rest of the world calls being human. The sun is setting and we turn away from the ocean, from the boats offering freedom, from the open horizon where possibilities are endless. We turn towards the community of Jesus with the perfect homes and perfect fences. We know it's a lie. We know every day we stay is another day that fear wins. Aaron, you dear boy, a lover of cats and broken people, a searcher for a better world, a rock for friends in need, a soldier who saw a different war, a man who felt the burden of 1,000,000 bombs. What you did from a place of love. And that makes you stronger and better than the whole lot you left behind. From a cult to the military, your days of freedom must have been few. I wish for you, in whatever exists beyond this form of blood and bones, that you feel the love you demonstrated here on earth, coming back 100-fold to envelop you, mend your broken heart, carry you to a place of freedom. I hope you are okay with this one-sided conversation. If people can relate to you, they might judge less and listen more. They might let your life, your loss, your statement speak to them. Please know this. You made an impact. You affected people. There is a street in Gaza named after you. You made a people who the world is watching be destroyed feel seen and valued. Your story is being told. And for myself and many more, we will do better, act sooner, sacrifice more. We will say your name, and we will see your face, and we will carry you in our hearts. There's so much tenderness in these memories and messages. When I read reflections like these, what I hear is shared formation, a recognition that the community of Jesus shaped families and shaped expectations, shaped how many of us learn to understand authority, guilt, belonging, and responsibility. Aaron was formed by that environment, and he was also his own person, curious, searching, thoughtful, wrestling in ways that were uniquely his. To understand him fully, we turn to the people who knew Aaron as Aaron.
Oh, my first memory of Aaron is him being born. At the community, we always prayed when a baby was expected and being born. And we were all always very excited for the new family and the new addition as a part of the community. And I remember that time. I didn't live with them, so I didn't know him personally that time, but I do remember his birth. I remember him growing up because all the children would come to church, and I remember Aaron. He was an interesting little boy. You could always see that he was thinking. You know, some kids are very free and very sort of carefree, and Aaron wasn't like that. Aaron was always, you could tell, I mean, it wasn't that he was reserved or anything like that, but he was always thoughtful and introspective, and he always had a sweet smile. I was a homeschool teacher there, and so my biggest memories of Aaron are from teaching him in the 8th, 9th, 10th grade years. So those are my biggest memories. And he was very fond of Jamie. They were in the same class together. And although they're very different people, they were very different people. They were very, I don't know, they appreciated one another, I guess I would say that. I had him in English class. And I had him in English class, and he struggled. He struggled with expressing himself. He struggled with, not that he couldn't express himself, he had tons of thoughts. So many thoughts that they had to be corralled, let's put it that way. And it was the same way in all of the literary analysis. You know, again, Aaron, very thoughtful and very insightful commentary on the literary pieces that we read. And he was never argumentative in class. He was never insistent on his opinion. But he had opinions and he had thoughts. And there was a lot going on. And he would share them, and they were always very interesting. And the kids would accept his points of view, which were often just a little different than others. And as I say, he struggled with his writing. And I think because I accepted his thoughts and I accepted his struggles, I didn't try to fit him into a mold. I tried to work with him to let him express who he was and get his ideas on the paper and not go on and on, because I would say to him, he wanted to make it perfect. Now, I'm not sure any kid writes perfectly. That's not how it works. But he wanted to put hours and hours into it. And I'd say, no, Aaron, you can only now we've worked on this, you can only put an hour into it tonight. That's it. An hour and you're done. I don't care if you're finished or not. Bring it to me tomorrow after only an hour. I want you to go out and, I don't know, take a walk. I want you to watch TV. I want you to play in the band. Do something else, not get wrapped around the flagpole about this particular item. I'm going to say he loved me for that. There was a year when he was not homeschooled and he went up to the public school, and he'd get off the bus, and it must have been the same time when I was, I don't know, walking somewhere on a regular basis, maybe to a class I was giving. And I often ran into him on the road. And, you know, sometimes he would give me a big hug. Hello, Sister Madeline, how are you? And I want to know how he was doing up there at the high school. Well, he thought he was doing all right. And, you know, that kind of thing. And that was true even after he'd left the community. Occasionally he would return and couldn't wait to see me. So we did have a good relationship. We did. I mean, we all have our struggles, and we all have to feel okay and be accepted in our own skin. I think that's what Aaron struggled with. Not that there is any such thing as an average kid, But Aaron was unique. You know, kids had certain things they were supposed to do. You know, they were supposed to rake leaves. They were supposed to help clean up the band room or something like that. I know, I might be mistaken here, but he wasn't also fond of being in winter percussion, which is what most of the kids did at that time. I venture to say all of the kids did. But he loved being part of the group. And I can remember watching him play he played the drum or something in the back there. You know, he learned to be good at it. It might not have been his thing, but he learned to be good at it. And I don't know why I know this, but he enjoyed being part of the group, although he didn't like doing it particularly. And I can remember that when I returned from being overseas and found that he had left the community and was in the service, I remember that I thought I was glad for him. I was glad for him to find a place that he would grow and live more of life. My last memory of him is on a time he was home or he'd come back to visit and saw me after church. And yeah, big hug, so glad to see me and all of that. Yeah, I would say that was probably the last time I saw him. I'm not as sad. I mean, of course I'm sad that, you know, there wasn't another way. But Aaron wanted to make a difference in the world. He wanted to make a mark. He believed that was something that was worthwhile. You know, I certainly didn't know him or know his thoughts after he left and what his position was on the Palestinian crisis. But I can see Aaron being captivated by something like that he wanted to make a difference. And in his mind, his life didn't matter. What he did by immolating himself mattered. He'd given his life in his mind to something important. And he always gave it his all, his 100%. And so I'm sad, but I can see it. I can see it, Aaron. You did it. You made a difference.
Aaron's friend and neighbor asked me to read something to you and to read something to Aaron. When the police let me know they were performing a wellness check, I was confused. They let me know that Aaron left his cat in his will to me. I didn't think much of it at first. I was confused. But about an hour later, I opened an email from Aaron, and I read the words, "If you are reading this, it means I have passed away." It was followed by Aaron asking me to take care of Pumpkin. My heart sank. I called the police immediately and sobbed to the dispatcher while telling them I thought Aaron was about to take his life. The police called me about 30 minutes later and let me know Aaron's phone had pinged in Washington, D.C. I had hoped that they would find Aaron before it was too late. I had hoped that I could still talk to Aaron and grow with him as friends. I spammed Aaron's email, begging him to respond, telling him I would be his friend and help him. I didn't know that Aaron was on life support when those messages were sent. I called Aaron's friend, who, for the purpose of protecting his privacy, I won't name. He let me know he had a suspicion that Aaron was the person who self-immolated in front of the Israeli embassy. I didn't understand, but I heard the emptiness in his friend's voice caused by shock. We chatted for a little longer, but we both didn't know what to say, and shortly we hung up. I spoke to Aaron's other friend about 30 minutes later and told him what I knew. His first emotion wasn't shock. but pure sadness and horror. That conversation didn't last more than a few minutes. After he hung up, I got a phone call from the police. They asked me to come outside and told me I could go into Aaron's apartment to get his cat Pumpkin if I still wanted him. I walked in with my husband, Ross. I looked around Aaron's apartment as much as I could, seeing the snacks he liked to eat, the books he had on his counter, and his lack of furniture, but an abundance of cat supplies. I walked upstairs. The police officer picked up Aaron's mattress, and I grabbed Pumpkin and kissed him before putting him in his carrier. The police officer tried to crack a joke with me saying, "Crazy story, right?" which I ignored. Ross and I took Pumpkin to the emergency vet to get checked out. Between all of this, I read bits and pieces of Aaron's last will. After the vet, I was able to read it in its entirety. And I saw a piece of Aaron I never knew about. I knew little about Aaron's life previously. I knew about how he was from Texas, how he came out here for a software engineering internship, how he liked our dogs, and how much he loved his cat. I now know where Aaron's heart was, and it was in Palestine. Every 5 minutes I was refreshing the news and looking up Aaron Bushnell. I was desperately looking to see that he had somehow survived. The last time I refreshed that day, I saw that Aaron had passed away, with no friends or family present. The next day, the shock wore off a little. I was sad, but I didn't understand how sad this would make me. Ross and I went to Aaron's friend's apartment and explained to him that Aaron had died. This man, probably 60 or 70 years old, was a little surprising to me at first. But after talking to him, it made sense. He was kind and gentle, just like Aaron. And he really, really loved cats and dogs. The next few weeks were hard. I talked to Aaron's friends and tried to process the situation with them as much as possible. They told me about Aaron's love for root beer, video games, activism, and cats. They told me about Aaron's backstory. It felt like something I was never supposed to know about Aaron. It was everything Aaron hated about his life. It was everything Aaron was trying to forget. I began knowing more about Aaron in 2 weeks than I had learned in the past 5 months of being his neighbor. I felt closer to him. I felt like a better friend to him. I had frequent thoughts of how I would bond with Aaron more with this newfound information. And then I would remember that he was gone. I would see all the news stories about Aaron being mentally ill or crazy. I would have people ask me if he was. I would try to explain that Aaron was just good. That's how I have and will always see him. I could tell people heard me, but they didn't believe me. Everyone wanted this crazy story about how Aaron was psychotic. No one wanted to hear that he was the kindest person I knew. I saw Aaron's mailbox fill up with letters. I would pick up his flowers and root beer I had left on his doorstep every morning when the wind blew them down. I would imagine Aaron saying hello and chatting with me when I let the dogs out. I believed I would see him again, until about a month after his passing, when the Air Force knocked on my door. They told me they were clearing out his apartment and asked me if I would like to take any of Pumpkin's supplies. I looked through a pile of Aaron's shirts and picked a red pullover I had seen him wear before. It smelled like him. Seeing his apartment cleared out solidified in my mind that Aaron was really gone. They took away the flowers I left for him. I no longer saw the mailman delivering mail. Pumpkin was the only thing I had to hold on to the memory of Aaron. I cannot express enough my gratitude towards Aaron for leaving him with me. Aaron stated in his will that his biggest regret was leaving Pumpkin. I am so fortunate that Aaron saw me the same way I saw him and trusted me with his beloved cat. A few months after his passing, I went back to my hometown on Cape Cod. Aaron and I had happened to grow up around 30 minutes away from each other. I visited Aaron's gravesite. It was just a rock with his initials. I placed some flowers there. I knew his soul wasn't there. I knew it was in Palestine. This is all to say the stories you read online never reflect reality. See the good in others before having your preconceived notion. Aaron always did. To Aaron, hi friend, I miss you. I love you. I hope you are doing well out there. I hope you know we are all managing down here. I hope you know we all still think of you. Pumpkin is doing well. I took him to get his surgery. He did incredible. I wonder if he slept on your pillow every night. I wonder if he woke you up by headbutting you every morning. He stares at the wall our apartment shared. I wonder if he knows that's where he lived with you. I bought the same treats you used to buy him, which he goes crazy for. He still loves to sleep in the bed you bought him. He is truly my biggest blessing. I hope you see how much love I give him for you. I miss you, Aaron. I will always say your name with love and respect. I will always remember you as good. With love, your friend Aaron. Our final voice comes from someone who grew up with Aaron in the community of Jesus. Someone who knew him before headlines, before uniforms, before adulthood. They were meant to sit across from each other at dinner the day after he died. Sometimes what stays with us most are the ordinary things. The meals, the conversations, the moments we assumed we would have. Here is her memory of Aaron.
It's really hard to know what my first memory of Aaron is because we grew up together. We were not the exact same age, but the same cohort. We were in homeschool together, so we had a lot of classes together. And Aaron was just kind of a quirky kid. You loved him. We argued like a married couple. I mean, we bickered because Aaron was one of the most intelligent people to this day that I've ever met. I remember vividly in between classes in the homeschool system, we would have breaks because we were in a community house basement. That was our classroom. And so we would get breaks in between, go outside, walk around. Well, our classroom was right next to the community barn. So there would be chickens. And sometimes the chickens would fly out of the chicken coop. And Aaron would run around and chase the chickens, pick them up and throw them back in the chicken coop. And I distinctly remember one day coming back inside and the teacher said, where's Aaron? And we were like, oh, he's just chasing chickens. And that was just kind of the kid that Aaron was. We would have classes. One thing I remember too is he couldn't sit in middle school. He couldn't sit upright in a chair. And the teacher would say, he would flop kind of backwards with his belly up. And the teacher would say, Aaron, I don't talk to bellies. And that was like an ongoing thing. Aaron, I don't talk to bellies. So one day he inverted and she said, Aaron, I don't talk to bellies. And he just doesn't move and goes, it's my back. But he just was always one step ahead of you. I also remember we had a computer programming class in he just was so smart. I mean, I couldn't keep up with him. I couldn't understand where he was. He was very analytical, very intelligent. You would think something and he would have thought it 5 thoughts ago and be that much ahead of you, that much planning, that much preparing. Everything was thoughtful with Aaron. I also remember Aaron, when we would be in winter percussion together, I remember he and I would get into it sometimes, and get into it not in arguing with each other, but really frustrated with kind of the system. We didn't appreciate some of the things that were being done to us kids. We didn't appreciate some of the way the adults were treating us, and we would kind of stew in that together, and that was like not okay. 2 kids joining up together saying how much they didn't like the grown-ups running the system. Like, that's a problem in any cult, I guess. But Aaron and I would do that, but I always felt like I was getting in trouble. And I remember coming home to my mom and being like, how come Aaron isn't getting in trouble? Like, I'm always getting in trouble. And she was like, he's just a little bit smarter than you, hon. Like, he just doesn't get caught. And then, later on, that all changed. You can't get away with things for too long in that place. But I just remember he was quirky. Like, we went through something called drill day together. And that was basically boot camp for kids. And I was 10, so he was probably 12. And we had to march through the mud in the freezing cold. And we had to march with this dead tree. And to anybody who doesn't understand, this sounds crazy, but I'm not even making this up. We had to march carrying this dead tree as kids up and down a hill that was muddy and it was snowy. And at one point, his sneaker came off in the mud. Like, it must have just gotten suctioned off. I don't know how it came off, but he lost his shoe. And so an adult, of course, yells at him like, Bushnell, where is your shoe? And he just responded, sir, I have no freaking idea, sir. And everyone was just kind of like, whoa, like, where did that come from? And it was all this pent up, like, frustration of, drill day is horrible. As a kid, you're being like forced to do all these physical exercises that are insane and militaristic, and you're 10 or 12 years old. And he just let him have it. And I don't even know that they yelled at him for that, but then we had to all go look for his shoe. And that is such a distinct memory in my mind of Aaron. I mean, he was always like hanging upside down off of things and making people laugh. And he just was so smart. Like, I will never meet someone as smart as Aaron. And when he left the community, I was in college, so I was like halfway out, halfway there. Like, I would still visit my family, but keeping up appearances. I hadn't officially left yet. And so we chatted a little bit. And when I knew he was in the service, a lot of people that leave the community nowadays, young people my age, go to the service because you have no money. There's no place to live on the Cape that's affordable. And it's another kind of high control group, and there's a safety net in it. Like, you have food, you have a place to sleep, whatever. So I wasn't surprised that he joined the service, because a lot of kids our age did. I say kids, we're adults now, but at the time we were 18, 20, whatever. And so when I knew that he was doing that, I was very proud of him. I would tease him a lot about it, because we had friends in all different branches of the service, whether it was Army, Navy, Air Force. And I was like, oh, Aaron, of course you chose the Chair Force. And I was like, you're not even a pilot. We just have this banter back and forth all the time about it. And it was friendly. And he knew I was just messing with him. But my last memory of Aaron, and this is what's really hard for me, is that Aaron had reached out to me about a month or 3 weeks before he passed, and he said, hey, I have an appointment in the town you live in. Can I hang out? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I haven't seen you in forever. We chat, but I haven't seen you face to face in forever. Come hang out, spend the night, let's get dinner. And we chatted back and forth, and he was so excited. And so 2 weeks before he passed away, we were talking about it, and I was like, just let me know when you're here. And that was really hard, because the day he was supposed to come to my house was the day after he passed away. So before I knew that Aaron had passed, I texted him and I said, hey, this is my address. let me know when you're going to be here. I'm so excited to see you. And that text message never got delivered. Like, I sent it, but his phone had been turned off at that point. And I just remember being at work when I found out about that. And that's something I don't think I'll ever have closure about is, maybe I should have texted him sooner and said something different. I don't know. But he was always thoughtful, always intentional, and he wanted to do something. I mean, he really cared about other people. I know he was like helping around at homeless shelters and giving away clothes and money, and he just never would do something for himself. Like, he would never spend a lot of money on clothes, or he'd never, get an expensive pair of shoes or a fancy car. He was not that kind of person. It was always, he was a vessel or something for other people. And I just remembered the aftermath when he passed, really struggling with this, not having closure, and reporters reaching out to me and everyone and their mother asking me questions. And I just was like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you feel about his political statement. He was selfless to the end. I mean, he really was. And my friend is dead, and I really miss him. Yeah, and this anniversary is hard. And I'll never know, like, if I had texted him earlier, if maybe we would have had dinner a week earlier or something. Get to see him one more time. But that's my friend Aaron, and love him to death. He was quirky and weird, but the kind of kid you just can't help but love a lot. And he loved a lot of people in his own way.
Aaron's life and the life of everyone he came in contact with is complex. His upbringing shaped him. His conscience shaped him. His questions shaped him. His compassion shaped him. And today, what we are honoring is not a final act. We are honoring a whole life and a whole person. When someone becomes known through tragedy, their life can become flattened. Today was an act of resistance to that flattening. Aaron was not just a moment. He was a child and a man, a student and a soldier, a seeker, a friend, a person who wanted his life to matter. And it did. It still does. To everyone who shared their memories, thank you. For those listening, thank you for remembering. And if you are someone who longs for your life to matter, please know this. It already does. And the world needs you here. Brought to you by Rock Harbor Truth, I'm your host, Bonnie Zampino. Please follow, like, and subscribe. Thank you for listening as we continue telling the story of the cult on the Cape.